UFC 317, this weekend, International Fight Week, June 28th, 2025. Will Charles Oliveira defeat the favorite, Ilia Topuria? Well, many of Charles Oliveira's supporters seem to think reason to doubt Charles. We have no reason to doubt him at all, but Ilia Topuria has been looking really good in his training. And by the way, it's the same fight day as Jake Paul versus Cesar Chavez Jr. Very interesting international fight week, to say the least. However, we're going to get to the reality of this fight and how this is going to go, the mistakes that Charles Oliveira has made in the past, and the unbeatable streak that Ilia Topuria has going on. Let's get to it. Now, just right before we get to the full card and the kicks and punches that deal with the main event and the co-main event, I want to say that I think it's a bit of a travesty that Ilia Topuria can't win the double championship, at least on the official basis. Now, he has said and proclaimed when and if he wins, he's going to hold two belts up, symbolizing that he was the 145 champion, whether current or not, and becoming a new 155 champion as that tradition that Conor McGregor started with holding two belts at once. Although the ones before him who were double champions, they did it in a way where they did it at separate moments of times in their careers. This is similar to that, or maybe it's not similar to that. We're going to get to the bottom of all of that. But in the meantime, yes, a lot of people out there do believe that Charles Oliveira has a chance to win this fight. But how? Look at Ilia Topuria. He just looks unstoppable right now. However, if you look at Charles Oliveira, has there ever been a moment in time where you could doubt that this guy could beat anybody at any time? Now, look, I understand that he makes mistakes. I understand that he's vulnerable to a lot of different types of shots. I understand that he's even had a reputation in his career where he quit quite a few times, right? Has sort of some mental issues in that particular regard, right? But the reality is you never know how a fight is going to play out till the day of. So with that in mind, let's get to the full card analysis of this whole entire event.
Let's take a look at what the possible fights Islam Makhachev has, okay? Okay, so JDM is next. What is he looking to do after that? He's looking to do the winner between Charles Oliveira and Ilia Topuria, because he wants to be a two-time 155 champion and become a double champion for the first time by moving down, because he's already been down at 155 as a champion and has defended his belt multiple times. Now, what he's trying to do is become a double champ via being the 170 champ reigning title holder. So that is the plan of Islam Makhachev. So what that means is that he's going to take on the winner. If he beats JDM, he takes on the winner next week. And by the way, with that in mind, it leads us into the next segue, which is the full card of UFC 317. I know we got a UFC card going on this weekend already. I did a coverage on that. I urge you to take a look at the live stream that I did this morning, because I give you a full breakdown of that whole entire, well, not the full breakdown of that card, but a good portion of that card. But what I'm going to do right now is the full card of UFC 317, and we're going to get right to it as soon as I put this right on the description below. Okay, so right here, we're going to put right into 45 minutes. Okay, 45 minutes is the full card. UFC 317. All right. So this is the full card for UFC 317. Let's take a look at this card, okay? And by the way, a lot of these matchups right now have just been recently made because they were really just trying to fill in this card while concentrating on the Abu Dhabi cards, which, by the way, is a whole different story and a whole different time. So here we go. UFC 317 right now. Okay, let's also see if we can... all right, so here we go. UFC 317. from the very beginning of the card, you got Diniz taking on Justin Tafa. Okay, 7-5 Justin Tafa versus 8-1 Diniz. Now, who am I going to go for with this one? I'm going to go with Diniz. Marty Miller says both McGregor. Shout outs to Marty Miller for that comment right there. So, Diniz is 8-1. Justin Tafa has a 50-50 record. What does that tell me? That tells me that here's an athletic and prospect that really doesn't have a lot of losses, right? He has one loss in his career. Let's take a look at what exactly that is, right? So at 6'4", 258 pounds, the only loss that he's had was his last fight was against Tyson Tybura. So he was on a hot streak before this fight. Whereas with Justin Tafa, keep in mind, has a 50-50 record, okay? So right here, loses to Tyson Tybura. Before that, knocks out the former football player Austin Lane, beats up a bunch of nobodies, and then gets a decision against a no-namer, okay? Whereas, you take a look at Justin Tafa, I've told you this plenty of times, this guy has a 50-50 record, okay? With this 50-50 record, what do we have right here? A 2-fight losing streak. By the way, a loss to the same guy that Diniz just got a decision against also, okay? And in his last fight, he loses to Talsin Teixeira, basically starches him, but he does beat Austin Lane, so they do have a common opponent. He has a controversial fight with Austin Lane, comes back, fights him again, literally with months, within a few months apart from each other, beats Parker Porter. By the way, very hard to say. Try saying his name 10 times, right? So this is a guy with a 50-50 record, taking on a prospect who, before this loss, was on a hot streak. So I'm going to go with Diniz on this one. Maybe even a first-round knockout. I'm going to say it's a first-round knockout for this one. So that is the early prelims for that one. How about this? Jack Hermansson versus RoboCop. Gregory Rodrigues, okay? 37 versus 33, 6'1 versus 6'2, 185, 77. So let's take a look at where they were just at recently in their career, okay? Jack Hermansson, longtime veteran, okay? Fighting out of both Oslo, Norway, and Sweden. So very interesting combination, right? Obviously in the Norway area has been developing MMA for quite some time. As I've told you guys earlier in the live stream, it is America that is really prevalent in developing MMA. Marty Miller says, I think I'd pick RoboCop on that one. Okay, so that's interesting. I'm going to go with Jack Hermansson. I'm going to tell you why. The reason why I'm going to go with Jack Hermansson is I think that there is a chance that he's going to out-wrestle him. He's done that to Joe Pfeiffer. He has great wrestling. He's got submission wrestling background, right? A very decorated grappler outside of MMA. So I'm going to go with him on this one by decision. Now, with RoboCop, okay, let's take a look at where RoboCop has been, okay? Gregory Rodrigues. So let's take a look at RoboCop. Where have you been? He got knocked out by Jared Cannonier. Before that, had a decision against Leroy Duncan. By the way, listen, here's the thing, right? Leroy Duncan, for as good as he is and a great prospect as he is not on the level of Jack Hermansson. Okay, and he struggled with Christian Leroy Duncan, right? He couldn't put him out. I understand Christian Leroy Duncan is very elusive and this and that, but, you know, yeah, man, Hermansson has a little bit of striking. So, Toxic Gameplay says, Kyrie, if someone ever hits you, I'm turning into Antonio Brown. Oh, wow, man. Shout outs to you, my man. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. Straight real loyalty right there to the max right there on the gang, on the set. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. So, and then prior to that, Gregory, he says Brad Tavares, okay? He beats Brad Tavares. That's a good win. He loses to Bruno Ferreira, okay? And I don't know, man. That's not a fight that Jack Hermansson wins. So, yeah, I'm going to give Jack Hermansson the decision on this one. Okay, so Viviane Araújo versus Tracy Cortez. I'm going to give this one to Tracy Cortez by decision, right? Obviously, this is not a fight where it's going to be heavy hitting. It's not going to be, it's not, yeah, they're not going to go to a finish, right? Okay, let's take a look at some last few fights of Tracy Cortez. Now, obviously, you've seen her on social media with Neon, you know, sort of promoting her brand and this and that. Loses to Rose Namajunas. Not an easy fight, but you know what? Great experience on her part. Beats Jasmine Javidikius, beats Gato before that, beats Justin Kish. Has a win over Aaron Blanchfield by a split decision back in Invicta. Okay, so Viviane Araújo. So, okay, so last fight, wins against Karen Silva. Before that, loses to Natalia Silva. And then Maya gets a win, decision against Amanda Ribas. You see the pattern, just all these decisions, especially at the highest level, right? So I'm gonna go with Cortez by decision on this one. No, you know what? Viviane Araújo. I think Araújo could win this one by out grappling her. So that's who I'm gonna go for. Marty Miller says, I'm curious about that too, Nubby. Oh, Nubby MMA says, yo, what's your thoughts on Oliveira versus Topuria? Oh, yes, we're going to get to that. So stay tuned, okay? I'm going in the order of the card. I think it's a hard pick against Topuria right now. Well, stay tuned because I definitely have a take on that one because we are about to head into the main card right now. Opening in the main card, you got Payton Talbott taking on Felipe Lima. Okay, let's take a look at Felipe Lima because we know a lot about Payton Talbott. Okay, he's supposed to be the top prospect for 135 right now, but Felipe Lima. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so Felipe Lima. Okay, coming off of a win against Miles Jones, has a win over Muhammad Nayev. Okay, rear naked choke, by the way. Okay, and that was in his UFC debut. He was in the Octagon. Let's see, was this for a championship? No, I don't think it was. Okay, but he has a unanimous decision win against Jonas Marriage. Okay, all right, so he's got a pretty decorated regional career. All right, so Payton Talbott, he's going to have a tough fight in his hands, okay? I like this one right here, okay? So let's take a look at Payton Talbott. Where is Payton Talbott right now in his career? Let's see here. So fighting out of Reno Combat Academy. By the way, a gym that I'm very much familiar with. By the way, that was also a gym that not only, I believe, Ryan Vader started with, but also I think Paige Van Zandt and then a whole bunch of other big names that they've had come out of that particular gym, right? Now Payton Talbott is that guy, right? He loses to Hani Barcelos by decision. Right, you've seen Hani Barcelos in his last fight. That's really no shame in that. I mean, probably one of the best wins of his career, right, against Cody Garbrandt. And once again, also Payton Talbott. But now Payton Talbott, before that, has a win over Cameron Simon, knocks him out. That was back in 2024. And then now has a 19-second win against, yeah, man, this kid is on a hot streak. You're going to have to give this one to him. I think that he wins this one by a decision. It's going to be a tough fight. I think these are two top prospects that may see each other in a title eliminator later down the road. So I think Payton Talbott wins this one by decision. Yeah, I'm going to give this one to Payton Talbott by a decision. I think there's going to be a lot of grappling exchanges to which will be on Payton's side. I think that he's going to knock him down. A 50-50 fight. But how about this? Another 50-50 fight, right? A lot of people are sleeping on some of these main card fights, right? Beneil Dariush, it's a 50-50 fight against Moicano. Now, Moicano obviously got a shot against Islam Makhachev as a late replacement. Not really indicative much of anything. But prior to Islam Makhachev, he has a win over Benoit Saint-Denis. By the way, in Paris, in the hometown of Benoit Saint-Denis, the former French Special Forces soldier turned UFC fighter, gets a win over him in his own country. And then gets a win over Jalen Turner. And then Drew Dober. And then Brad Riddle. Before that, he loses a 5-round decision against Rafael dos Anjos when Rafael was really in his prime. He's sort of declining at this point, but not, you know, in the way that he was in 2022. Leg kicking him, giving him a little bit of mercy on top of that. I mean, letting him coast on top of that, but he learned a lot from it. So the RDA fight, the Islam Makhachev fight, should not be indicative of this one. But other than that, man, it was a bit of a hot streak. But let's take a look at Beneil Dariush in his recent run, or maybe lack of run, because now he has a 2-fight losing streak, but not a bad losing streak, right? You see, having a losing streak in the UFC is not the same as having a losing streak in the regionals, right? Look at who he lost to. Arman Tsarukyan finishes him, and then Charles Oliveira also finishes him, which leads me to believe that Moicano may finish him, not early though. We'll have to work for it, but maybe somewhere in the 3rd round. So I'm going to go with Moicano by 3rd round decision. Okay. Now, next one, Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval. Okay. And Mr. C says on the comment section, Riddle, not Riddle, rhymes with Liddell. Okay. Riddle. Okay. Riddell. Okay, got it. Okay, so next one is Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van. Now, Joshua Van has been very active, right? A very inspirational story that came out of this kid, right? He said that in 2017, he saw Conor McGregor box Floyd Mayweather, and weirdly enough, a boxing match involving a UFC fighter is what led him to MMA, but also, I guess, his infatuation with both Mayweather and McGregor and wanting to be part of the circus. But on any regard, he's now part of the circus. All of a sudden, he's a veteran of the UFC now, getting all these wins, right? A rising star in the 125 division. By the way, a division that is yearning for stars and guys with some stories. So Joshua Van was born in Van Bao Tong in Chin State in Myanmar, okay, to a family of 5 siblings. And due to the SPD siege in Myanmar, his family had to relocate to Malaysia when he was 10 years old in search of better opportunities. Then he moved to Houston, Texas, and that's how he got into MMA and got into the UFC as a result of that. So, only losses he's had against Charles Johnson, and then the other one was very early in his career when he got rear naked choked in the regional scenes in Houston, Texas. So, a lot of learning curve there, right? Ever since then, Edgar Shiraz gets a unanimous decision win. Cody Durden gets a unanimous decision win. Ray Tesora gets a unanimous decision win. Shows a lot of striking prowess in these fights, right? Very crisp with his boxing, right? But also a Max Holloway with good footwork. Bruno Gusso Silva gets a win over him back in June. That wasn't too long ago. Literally UFC 316, and here we are, right? So taking a look at Joshua Van's opponent, okay? Obviously a much more seasoned pro. Well, not so much more than him, right? But they have the right amount of fights. This is why we're seeing a lot of 50-50 fights in these undercards that I think is really, I guess, being underestimated. Okay, so he has a win over Tyra, gets a win over Brandon Moreno, split decision. Okay, not a very easy, split decision. Alex Pantoja goes to the cards with him. And by the way, that's for the flyweight division championship fight. Loses to Alex Pantoja again way before. Okay, that was in 2021, but has lost over Brandon Moreno, but then gets a win over Brandon Moreno. So my prediction on this one, I think this is going to be a 3-round fight of the night between Joshua Van and Brandon Royval, but I think Joshua Van is going to outstrike him all throughout the round 1 to round 3. Brandon Royval is going to get his licks in. He's going to get his highlights in, but it's going to be mostly Joshua Van who's going to outscore him by the end of the fight. So moving on with that one, it is Alex Pantoja versus Kai Kara-France. Now, Alex Pantoja right now has been red hot, okay? I don't think it's going to be any different. I think Kai Kara-France still makes the same mistakes that he's probably going to make in terms of, keeping his hands down and getting knocked out. He has one win going into this fight, and then he already gets a title shot. I want you to put that in perspective, okay? He gets finished by Brandon Moreno, loses to Amir Albazi, and then just currently has a win over Steve Erceg. He's been 1-2 in his last 3 fights, and he gets a title shot. It's kind of strange, right? Which is why I say that he is tough. He's going to come in here prepared, and he's going to come in here a lot more careful in his previous fights, and he's going to appreciate this opportunity. And as a result of that, I think it's going to lead into a 5-round war, or at least a 5-round domination on the part of Alex Pantoja, controlling the fight from round 1 to round 5. So official prediction, Alex Pantoja with a 5-round decision. Okay, so now moving on to the main event. Okay, now let's time mark this 64. Ooh. Okay, 1 hour and 4 minutes. Topuria versus all right, so Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. Okay, so this main event, I got to tell you, this main event is a lot closer than people think, but I think eventually Ilia Topuria is going to clip him. Okay, so how exactly is this going to happen? Okay, well, Charles Oliveira is going to use his jab just like Max Holloway does, which is why I almost kind of confuse his name out of it, right? I think that Ilia Topuria is going to knock him out later in the 4th round. They're going to have a kickboxing match. They're going to have a scramble. It's going to look very even, and I think Ilia Topuria might be a little bit surprised due to the fact of the range and the distance and the size of Charles. He's going to be overwhelmed for a little bit, but then he's going to overcome it, and then he's going to probably knock him out maybe somewhere in the 4th or 5th round. That's my official prediction for Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. So to put it simply and to put it plainly, it's going to go as very methodical and very technical in the 1st round. It's going to be a back and forth. 2nd round, there's going to be wild scrambles with Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira, a few submission attempts maybe in the 3rd or 4th round. And then in the 4th round or 5th round is when Ilia Topuria is going to lay down the shot, and it's going to look very devastating, and it's going to create an even bigger buzz for Ilia Topuria because people are surprised that he was able to fight a tough fight, but also persevere through it while also being able to fight back and win in a devastating fashion. So that right there is the official prediction. That right there is the official prediction for UFC 317.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Stop the music. We got a bonus round, okay? Because check this out. The bonus round is going to consist of talking about the fights that they just recently added into the mix. And that is Terrance McKenna versus Vyacheslav Borschev, Sacramento's very own Vyacheslav Borschev. Now, we know a lot about Terrance McKenna. Let's take a look at Vyacheslav Borschev, okay? Straight out of Sacramento. A bit of a 50-50 record, 8-5-1. Obviously has fought out here in the regional scenes of ONE FC and things of that nature. Okay, so let's check out his UFC record right now, okay? So he is 3-4 in the UFC right now, right? Has a win in the Contender Series, has a 50-50 record in LFA, but obviously he fought Tom Nolan in his last fight. That was in UFC 312 in the Dricus du Plessis-Strickland fight, loses to a unanimous decision, loses to a decision against James Lontop. Prior to that, gets choked by Chase Hooper, and then has a win over Maciej Haysayer. Okay, that was back in 2023. All right, well, now let's take a look at Terrance McKenna. Okay, let's take a look at where Terrance McKenna is at in his career trajectory right now. Okay, so Terrance McKenna, very interesting character to say the least, right? Well, by the way, was a former gang member. Okay, and I didn't know this about Terrance McKenna at all. Now, I don't even know what gang that is. Obviously, it's in Florida, so that right there is a whole different world of politics, that contrasting of California. But he was also a military brat. He lived in a military base, so he had a very interesting life, right? Reminds me a lot of my homie, who's also a fighter, Jarrell Askew. If you guys know anything about Jarrell Askew, he was also a military brat, but grew up in Alaska. So he kind of reminds me of him a little bit. Has a win over Demir in Saudi Arabia. First round knockout. Gets head kicked by Estevan Rabovic. Okay, no shame in that. Has a first round knockout against Mike Breen, and he's got a lot of first round knockouts, right? He's got a 20-second knockout here, but he also gets finished, right? He's one of these fighters that's like, oh my goodness, I got to tell you, man, this is a 50-50 fight right here, okay? I think this fight is going to go to a finish, and I'm sorry to say, even though Vyacheslav is a Sacramento guy, I don't know if he's going to beat Terrance McKenna in this, right? But listen, both of these guys are at a 50-50 state, right? Anybody can beat anybody at any time, okay? So I'm going to go with Terrance McKenna on this one. Second round TKO. Sorry to Borschev. I don't know, man. You know what? I don't know. I'm going to go back and forth with this one. All right. I'm going to have to make an official decision right now, okay? I'm going to go with Borschev by knockout. Sorry, Terrance McKenna, but I got to go with the Sacramento guy. And guess what? I know that's a little bit of a biased pick, but hey, it is what it is by the end of the day, okay? So moving up to the card, we got, let's see now. What do we have here? 28:44 on the timestamp. We're going to make this Hyder a meal. 28:20. We're going to make... No, you know what? 29 minutes. Okay, Hyder versus, who is this guy? Jose Miguel. Okay, Jose Miguel, who doesn't have a Wikipedia page, but let's check out the one who has a Wikipedia page. Let's look at Hyder Emil. Okay, so Filipino fighting out of Cebu City. Okay, shout outs to him. Featherweight division. Trains out of the El Nino Training Center, which, by the way, is owned by Gilbert Melendez. Okay, so fought in the Contender Series. Has an 11-0 record. Ooh, okay. I might have to go with this guy, okay? Split decision over William Gomez. Really has wins with virtually I don't want to say nobodies, but they don't have a Wikipedia page. You know, if they don't have a Wikipedia page, that means that their promotion of their fight is, you know, of being a fighter is not really that strong. All right, but let's take a look at Jose Miguel Delgado. Who is this guy? Let's take a look at it and see if we can find him on Tapology. Let's see who this guy is. Okay, so do we find anything about this guy, Jose? Okay, so he's a featherweight. It's this guy right here. Let's check him out right here. Okay, so this is who he is. 9-1. Okay, so 11-0 versus 9-1. Very interesting. Okay, 27 years old, fights out of Yuma. Affiliation with MMA Lab. Okay, so he fights on the same team as Ben Smooth Henderson. 1-0 in the UFC right now. Has an overhand right over Connor Matthews. Okay, so this is going to be a very interesting fight. Look, I'm going to go with Hyder Emil by decision. You want to know why? A lot of this guy's fights, the 9-0 fighter, have not gone to the distance, right? He has one loss by a decision. So what does that tell me? When you take on somebody like Hyder Emil, let's take a look at Hyder Emil's record in that regard. Okay, ooh, here we go. Here's Hyder Emil. Okay, so when we took a look at Hyder Emil, what does the brother have going on? He's got a few decision wins under his belt. He knows how to go to the scorecards, which means I'm going to give this fight to Hyder Emil by decision. That's my official prediction on this one. All right, so next fight in the card. Okay, we've gone over Hermansson, Viviane Araújo. Now we've gone over Terrance McKenna in this bonus round. Let's go with Niko Price versus Jacob Smith. Okay, Jacob Smith versus Niko Price. We know a lot about Niko Price. Okay, let's see here. 32 minutes into it, we're gonna 32 minutes. We have Niko Price versus Smith. Okay, so what do we know about Niko Price and Smith? Okay, so Niko Price versus Smith. Let's go right here. Let's take a look at Niko Price's career so far, okay? Now, for those that don't know, he was Robbie Lawler's retirement fight. He got knocked out. Robbie Lawler got a nice send-off at UFC 290. I remember that fight vividly. I was literally in Walt Disney World in Anaheim while I was watching that fight. I was about to go to the rides, right, in Disney World, and I was in my hotel watching that. And what was great was that I actually got to watch all of the fights while I was in Disney World, while all of that was going on. So every time there was a finish, every time there was a fight in between, you know what I would do? I would go watch the fights, and then there was a lot of finishes, including this one. So it was easy to watch all of the fights. But nonetheless, after that fight, he lost to Robbie Lawler. Alex Morono was the next fight, gets a decision, and then gets a decision loss against The Rock's homeboy, Tarumba Gorembo. Okay, so obviously this guy is a veteran, right? Has over 20 fights in his career, almost 30 fights. But let's take a look at Jacob Smith. What do we know about this Jacob Smith character? A guy that is virtually unknown, that nobody knows about. I'm going to look him up right now on Topology because he doesn't have a Wikipedia page. And I doubt even with the hardcore fans, okay, they would have to look up this guy somewhere to even, you know, find out any information on him. So, okay, let's take a look at some information on Jacob Smith, Jacob Cobb Smith. Okay, 10-0. How about this? Undefeated. I might have to go with this guy, Fortress MMA. Well, let's take a look at some of the wins that he's had over his career. So, one UFC win, okay, taking on a veteran like that, 9-0, knocks out Preston Parson. First round knockout, left hook, ground and pound finish against Christian Schiavo. Gets a knockout against Jared McCollin. Okay, first round, and that is in the LFA. No, I'm sorry, Fury Fighting Championships. Okay, he has another knockout, okay, against Austin Jones, gets a decision another decision. So this guy's a knockout artist, and then he ground and pounds you to the ground, right? Probably something to the effect of maybe knocking you down. And then, you know what, man, I'm going with this guy. I think this guy has a chance to beat Niko Price. So I'm going to go with him against Niko Price. Now, we got Christopher Ewert taking on Jackson Mcvey. Okay, let's go with the last fight that we have to take a look at. So, okay, let's take a look at who this guy is right here, right? Oops. Okay, let's take a look at who this Jackson Mcvey. Jackson Mcvey. What an interesting name, right? Jackson Mcvey. Let's take a look at where Jackson Mcvey is from. So Jackson the Moose Mcvey, middleweight division. Starting off the fight, 6-0, by the way, the Moose. Okay, so he's a 6'4", 185er, undefeated. St. Charles Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu MMA, where he represents, no losses, has 4 wins in the LFA. Okay, and now he's coming into the UFC in the big times, right? Against Christopher Ewert. So what kind of wins does he have here? Chokes, knockouts, chokes again, knockouts, guillotine chokes, triangle chokes. So this guy's got some good submissions. And, well, he's got an amateur bout where he lost by armbar, and then he really learned from that. So, all right, let's take a look at his opponent, Christopher Ewert. Okay, so now Christopher Ewert. Okay, Christopher Ewert out of Texas, 7-0. So 2 undefeated guys right here, okay? 2 undefeated guys. We got right here 7-0. Reese Watkins has a decision win, body shots, knee to the chin, unanimous decision against Pace. Okay, so I'm going to go with Ewert, okay? I think the height, he's going to manage to use the height against Ewert, right? 6'4", 185er. He's got a great chance of winning this one, but I think this goes to a decision. I think both of these guys, I think this is a UFC debut for both guys, right? I believe that is a UFC debut for both guys. I don't think, last fight was in the LFA. This guy's last fight is, so these are regional guys coming into UFC. So this is both their UFC debut. I'm going to have to go with, I'm going to have to go with Mcvey on this one. Yeah, I'm going with Jason Mcvey on this one. Just the height alone, I think he's going to get it. I think he's going to pull off some submission attempts on top of that. But I also think that he wins by decision. I think he's going to out-grapple him. That's the way that I see this fight going. Just a whole lot of grappling on his side. And the UFC jitters is a real thing, right? This is the big show. Look at where they are going to be fighting at. They are going to be fighting literally in the biggest card of the year, International Fight Week. It doesn't get any bigger than that. So for sure, the UFC jitters are going to be there. And I think that he probably will have the better of those exchanges in the feet, and especially with the range that he has going on. But I also think that there's going to be some good scrambles involved in this fight. And basically, that's it. That's the whole entire fight card. I had to add those last ones in there because in the recording of this particular video, well, we only had 8 fights. And then after that, all of a sudden, these other 4 fights came into the mix. So how many fights do we have in total for UFC 317? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we got 12 fights in total. I gave the first 8 and then the last 4 fights that were added into this card. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the card. I hope you guys enjoy the whole entire fight week. Obviously, there's also Jake Paul that is fighting this week, but I think this one beats this weekend's fights, and it's almost like we know what's going to happen with Jake Paul and Chavez, or do we? But either way, we're going to tap in for both, but more so focused on UFC 317. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Come tap in for the live stream this weekend, and I will see you in the next one, inshallah.
MMA needs. If you want to find predictions, news, and everything that deals with MMA, shout outs to Kyrie, Abu El Kir MMA, Sacramento, California, represent.
That's right, Kyrie. I appreciate you, my nigga. You came in here, you was talking that shit. That's right, bro. Much love, Flo. I appreciate you for always stepping in, bro. Be safe out there. Man, my nigga Kyrie. My man Kyrie came through. He started talking that shit. Hey, here's the thing. Here's the thing. That nigga will whoop your fucking ass. You will think that nigga's all squared up and all that type of shit. Nigga come through and beat your fucking ass. Like, man, fuck you up. You will never see it coming. So for those of y'all